All right, welcome everybody. Today I have JT follows JC. I don't know, maybe a year or maybe even longer, or maybe a couple of years. I started seeing some of his TikToks popping up on my feed. Followed him. He started doing a lot of old world stuff, a lot of biblical stuff, and it all resonated with me. And I said, one day, I got to interview that guy. And here we are. This is I saw you on. Where did I see you? You were on, you were on Banjo's show. And I was like, I got to reach out to him. And you picked up the phone or however we contacted each other. And here you are. Welcome.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dave. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, this is, I'm looking forward to this.
There's so much I want to talk to you about. I'm really, they call me Flat Earth Dave because I really focus on Flat Earth because, I don't know how much you know about me. I was doing a podcast called Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, looking into, the September thing, the Boston thing, the school in Connecticut, and all the other crazy conspiracies. And people started sending Flat Earth to me, and I just laughed at them, as most of us did. And I said, it's too stupid to even look at. Then I was forced to look by Sophia Smallstorm. She's like, Dave, you have to look at this. And I tried to debunk it. I didn't even try to find the truth. I tried to debunk it. Right. I'm just going to look at this and prove it wrong, prove the globe and be done with these numbskulls. And, a year later, I bail out of that podcast, start the Flat Earth podcast. And I find out that this is the one that wakes people up. And you know what it wakes people up to? It wakes people up to you cannot deny creation. I think that is the number one thing, because that's what happened to me, JT. I denied creation pretty much my whole life. And it's because of what I was taught as a child. I went on a trip to Bermuda with a Young Life organization, right? And I was born a non-practicing Jew. My family's Jewish, but we never really did anything, And so I went on this Christian trip and we had a Bible study, and I was like, oh, Bible study, this is going to be weird. And we're sitting on the edge of a cliff, and the first passage he reads is a star fell to the earth. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing ever, right? A star can't fall to the earth. The star would eat the earth. The star is like, a house, and the earth is like a pebble, right? I'm like, yeah. And so I disregarded the Bible and everything in it based on that one incident for 50 years. Okay. And yeah, so think about how powerful that is. And then when I was forced to look into flat earth, and I was like, okay, it is flat. It's intelligently designed. Oh my God. And that changed everything for me. So I find myself, and also my podcast, by the way, the Flat Earth podcast with Matt Long. Matt Long comes from the biblical side of Flat Earth. He's all biblical, and he's a great biblical Flat Earth teacher. And it was a great balance. But I don't lead with biblical, or at least I didn't, because I know that there's people that were like I was, that there are people that are like I was. And as soon as you mention Bible, I'll be listening to a podcast, got 5 pages of notes. These guys are great. They're talking about everything. And they're like, okay, let's pray or let's read a Bible verse. I tear up the thing. I unsubscribe and I stop following them. That was me. There's a lot of people in the world that way. Right. And so I try to bring people up the staircase of disbelief scientifically. And then when they get there and they go, oh, by the way, it's also in the Bible. And people like you and, the late, great Rob Skiba. And, there's a lot of great Christian teachers out there, educators. And what I find is, and I'll throw it back to you, is in my life, if people try to drag me somewhere, I just pull the opposite direction. But if you say, hey, look what I'm doing here. And that's what I find your stuff. You're just like, look at this. You're just like, look at this. You don't tell anybody, believe this. You just say, look at this.
Yeah.
And the truth resonates.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, when I first started making content on social media, I was kind of like you. Like I believed, I came in from the very Christian angle, but I was kind of talking about all the New World Order stuff and all that stuff. And I was kind of thinking like the book of Revelation was playing out. And so I was looking into every conspiracy. And the flat Earth one was one that I was real resistant to at first because, yeah, I'm college educated and stuff like that. So I know what I've been taught. But at the same time, I've always kind of been in the way that, like you said, I don't tell you what to believe because I understand that speaking at somebody and just listen to me, kind of that appeal to authority, that doesn't work on me. So if it doesn't work on me, then why should I present things like that? And to be perfectly honest, like what I've been doing for the last about 3 or 4 years is just going on this truth journey. And I'm like, I'm learning things, and I don't want to say things that I'm not sure of and present them in a way that it's a fact, because it leaves me no wiggle room to to be wrong and to say, oh, wait, I got that wrong, and I've got more evidence has been presented to me, and so therefore I can, like I can grow and I can learn, and yeah. But I think it's really cool what you're saying, because I think that's why God gives us a individual testimony, because you know what reached you. So you're not going to have to go, you're not going to try to reach people in a different way. And it's like, maybe you can, as you grow and you learn, you can say, knowing who your audience is and how to present it in the way. But I think the best thing that you can do is say, well, this worked for me. So if I have this certain message, there's a lot more people like me out there. So this will plant seeds in them and they'll be able to learn. So I came at it from like the opposite angle, where I grew up in a church. And so I wasn't like you, where I was like, okay, we already believe the Bible was true, or at least we claim to believe the Bible. And I think that that's what really got me, was that I was learning all the conspiracies, and I definitely didn't believe we went to the moon when I first was making TikToks. But when I first kind of like presented myself, it was like, I'm a Bible believing Christian. So then eventually, you're going down the rabbit hole, you're talking about all the different conspiracies, and you're always saying, yeah, I believe the Bible. I believe the Bible. And then some people were flat earthers, and they'd be like, well, what about this part of the Bible? Do you believe this part of the Bible? And I was like, I had to kind of like really, do I believe that kind of part of the Bible? Because I heard other people trying to rationalize it. And I think eventually it kind of pushed me to the fence of just asking questions of other Christians who weren't flat earthers. And I said, well, what do you think this means? And the funniest thing about that kind of line of questioning was that I was not a flat earther then. And I said, well, what about this? What about this? And they immediately got real defensive. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, what? Is this not a safe place to ask questions? Like, I was hoping you would have a good answer for me to disprove this, so I could go back to being a Glober, and you know what I mean? Like, because I think that probably like you, like, that it's really not something you'd want to be unless it was undeniable to you, because you're,
hey, I'm going to be a flat earther and have my family and all my friends laugh at me and reject me, and cause all sorts of issues. That's what I'm going to do today.
Right. Absolutely. So that's what one of my brother said to me. He's like, if you say the Earth's flat, they're not going to believe you about all these other conspiracies and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I mean, if I'm trying to be here and I'm really on this truth journey and I'm trying to be honest with myself, I have to like at least ask the questions, because they said if there's good answers for these things, I'm fine with it. I mean, because I got no skin in the game. But when you start to look into what the scriptures say and you learn about what the firmament is, not the atmosphere, it divides waters from waters. There's water above, and those kind of things are like undeniable. That there's this some kind of a dome that the Bible describes that water is above it. So I don't know how you can square outer space with water above the sky. I mean, it's not atmosphere, it's not clouds. It's very clear that the Bible indicates that the earth is stable. It says that, in the book of Joshua, and I think this is the one that was almost kind of like, there's no rational way to explain, if you believe the Bible's true, if the sun and the moon stopped in the book of Joshua so they could fight a battle. I said, well, if the earth was spinning, I don't think stopping the sun and the moon would affect the amount of daylight you had to fight that battle. So I was like, so this passage is either correct or it's not correct.
Right.
And so if you say you believe the Bible, well, then, like I said, you got to choose man or you got to choose God. And I said that I did another video a while back. And of course, this was actually, I was more firmly ingrained in biblical cosmology. I was just reading, if you believe Genesis 1 is a literal account of creation, you have to be logically consistent to at least say, this is not what we're taught in science. So if you say it's an allegory, I mean, I would disagree with you. I would say that it doesn't indicate it's allegory. But if you believe it's literal, well, then it literally is not the same as what the science says. I said that it says that God put the sun and the moon and the stars in the firmament on day 4. I said, well, there was days and nights before the firmament, I mean, before the sun was there. And it also says that the God never put the sun, like the earth in motion to spin. I was
But
like, it's not the same. There's no
but
outer space in this scenario.
I grew up believing the Bible's a storybook. Astrology is just for hippies,
Hmm.
and science, the word science and astronomy is the real thing, right? Astronomy is by definition just pure pseudoscience. The Bible is the most accurate, correct history and scientific book that there is. I mean, if you really start looking into it,
Hmm.
when you find a discrepancy between the two and you look at it, you find out that what they're claiming in science, they're not using science; they're using pure pseudoscience. You said, we have the firmament, we got the waters above. And maybe that's why NASA calls everything ship terms up there: ships, docking, the Sea of Tranquility, right?
Yeah.
Everything is
Hmm.
nautical terms. But hold on. So this is let's take this out. Hold on, there it goes. So this is a gas simulator, and we open it up, and gas escapes. Now, if I turn this into a vacuum out here, it'd be gone instantaneously,
Right. Hmm.
right? And so the fact that we're breathing proves God. Jump right to it. It proves God because a Big Bang doesn't create a dome. Here we have some gas in here, and we have a vacuum up here, right? We open up the valve, up and away from gravity, it just instantly goes. So let me ask you a question. If this vacuum chamber here was 10 times the size, still a vacuum, what would happen? Same thing.
It, yeah, it would go everywhere.
It would just go, whatever, this little volume would go right up into there. So if we made the top ball an infinite vacuum, it still would evacuate, right? It would still equalize rapidly, violently. Right.
Correct.
Right. So this is, we're told by Carl Sagan, this is the pale blue dot, right? We're here. This is the Voyager. This is the Earth. This is an infinite vacuum. How does the air stay stuck to that dot?
I don't know. I don't know how the gravity, I guess gravity is the answer, right?
Well,
But
but
gravity allows little it's enough to hold all the air and all the water down on the surface of the earth, but then little butterflies can fly with no resistance.
right. And people say, oh, gravity. Well, I can take a straw and suck air and water up and away from Earth with the tiny low pressure system of my mouth and lungs. But the infinite 417 vacuum of space can't.
Right.
Right.
Hmm.
And people like, I can't figure that one out. You know why? It's so here's the thing. People assume what we're taught is true, then they're trying to reconcile it with reality, and they think that they're stupid. You're not stupid. It's stupid. That's why you
Yeah.
can't figure it out. And literally, people think they're stupid because they can't figure it out. You can't figure it out because it's stupid.
Well, it's like they say that there's no stupid questions, but then you get called stupid for asking lots of questions
Right.
about just basic things. And I do agree with you that people underestimate their ability to understand something because it's like I'm not asking about all the math because I'm not good at trigonometry or anything like that. I'm
Correct.
just asking like the basic idea, like just help me understand it. And I said I think that was kind of really telling again that I'm asking people who seem very smart and I ask them like basic questions, and all of a sudden they start getting upset, and I'm like, if there's a simple answer to this, then I'm happy to hear it. But why are you like, yeah, like seriously, like, what did I say something wrong? And immediately it's like they start calling you a flat earther before I was one, when I was just asking for a question. I mean, I was just asking for answers, and I think that's when you kind of see it's almost like that kind of left right paradigm where somebody labels you something, right? You're a racist, you're a phobe, you're a this and you're that. So therefore, I don't even have to answer your questions. It's like, but I'm not what you're saying I am. I'm a genuine person asking a question.
Now, the term flat earther, a lot of people have trouble with, have a problem with it because the earth is not flat. It's a topographical, you know,
Hmm.
hills, valleys, mountains, trenches. Um, it's level. It's not flat. It's level, right? So people call it level earth, true earth. Those are good things. But guess what? Anyone is at that point where you're arguing over the name, you know it's flat. You know that it's a level, horizontal, topographical, non-rotating plane. right? So I purposely stick with Flat Earth Dave for two reasons. One, because it gets all the people that have no idea, they only know flat Earth. They're the only searching flat Earth. Flat Earth will
Right. Yeah.
get their
Yeah.
attention, so that's
Hmm.
why I use it. And the other thing is that way my initials are FED, and that way people will know that I'm an agent because my mother planned it out 62 years ago. She goes, "I'm going to give him a D name, so when he gets into the flat Earth movement, he could be FED, and it'll be Revelation of the Method."
Yeah,
Yeah,
I caught that.
just it's amazing. I understand how truth researchers can be, for lack of a better word, a little paranoid.
Yeah,
But
a little
everybody,
bit, a
yeah,
little bit.
a little bit, but everybody, hold on. And then the other thing that, well, we can go back and forth between the Bible, but um, I started seeing you doing a lot of old world stuff, and for some reason,
Wait,
some.
I want to stick
Oh,
with the one. I want to go
okay,
back to one thing you
all right,
said
sure, go ahead.
about the one thing about you saying you go into whatever your research is with all these assumptions, and then you try to make the things that you're told fit the things that you're seeing. But I would say that's exactly the same way that I said that a lot of Christians who are Bible believers do the exact same things, because it's like we already know this because NASA, because the science tells us this. So then they read that into the text. And then that's when you say, like, what's the firmament then? Oh, it's just the atmosphere. It's just the clouds. It's just this. And you're like, but it doesn't really fit. And I think that's what basically what you're saying is like that even if you're coming at it from a secular point of view, it's like you're trying to explain the observable world based on what you're told. And it gets really like it racks your brain. And you're like, and if you question it, you sound stupid. But I'm like saying like this is what it says. And the funny thing about the Bible is that they tell us, we're told that everyone thought the earth was flat before the year 1500. I was like, so you trying to say that the Bible's not talking about flat earth, then, it would square that because you
Yeah,
just said that everyone before this date believed it was flat. So maybe that's also why you don't get explicit text that says the earth is flat in the
and
Bible.
when you
I mean,
say
it's certainly implied, but it's also if we all understood something to be true in the day and age we lived, we wouldn't have to tell everybody every detail about everything
right,
because everybody would already understand. And so the Bible, like the text, indicates that's the worldview.
if you were like dropped here on Earth, no one, you don't know anything, and you lived your whole life exploring freely, you would never ever come to the recollection that we're spinning, whirling, and twirling in a space vacuum and its curvature. But you tell somebody Earth is flat, they laugh at you. If you were taught flat Earth, and then when you're 20 something, they said, "Hey, we're spinning, whirling, and twirling," you would laugh at that person.
Yeah,
It,
you would obviously say this does not make sense. This is what I've been told, and this is what I observed. But yeah, now they're in contrary. Before we get over to the old world, I want to mention this one point.
wait, I got another point, but go ahead. But you first.
Okay, I just want to say that the Bible obviously was like kind of the strongest motivator. The other thing was when I found out that supposedly they took the picture of the blue marble on the way to the moon, and I knew that was really hard for me to reconcile if I didn't believe they went. But the other thing I want to say that one of the most pivotal things was not just the Bible, but it was astrology. It was the zodiac. It was the Mazzaroth. I said because it's funny because I grew up in a background where like that would be considered new agey, so we don't even talk about it. But then I started to read actually that in the text of the Bible that indicates it's talking about the constellations, like in the book of Job, like chapter 38, it mentions the Mazzaroth. And so I was like, okay, so I've seen the diagrams of the Earth, whirling and twirling, and the sun and all the planets spinning through the galaxy. And I thought about that, I was like, but Genesis 1:14 actually says that God put the sun, the moon, and the stars in the sky for signs, number one, season, days, and years. So if you think about it, that these constellations return to exactly where they're at the same time every year.
More
And then you
accurate
have,
than any watch in the world because they are the definition of time.
yeah, God is saying the
Yeah.
sky is a clock.
Yes.
So the sky is a clock. It would not work like that. And of course, then you see like Polaris, you're like, so this one thing doesn't move, but we're doing all that. And of course, you'd have to also believe that if there's many solar systems, right? With all the other ones would be doing this too, right? Wouldn't they be moving too? And yet you never have, you go all the way back to like the Dendera zodiac from ancient Egypt, and the constellations are exactly the same. So you're saying that in all those like 4,000 years, those constellations have not got closer to each other or whatever. Like you see the Orion sitting over the pyramids. How could that happen
So
with that model?
I'm going to go to that. I just want to go back to one thing you said, that the Bible said since the 1500s, everybody knew the Earth was flat. They were teaching flat Earth in the 1900s.
I've heard that. That's wild.
Did you ever see my interview with Ruth?
No, I have not.
102 years old. So I was visiting my mother in Florida. She's in an elder care facility, and my mom's taking a nap. I said, "Is there anybody here over 100 that has their wits?" She goes, "Ruth, right over there, sitting in the cafeteria." And so I went and talked to her. And I was interviewing her about the old world. I'm not bringing up flat Earth. And she had such a good memory. And I said, "What did they teach you?" I said, "Where'd you go to elementary school?" She told me. And I said, "What did they teach you in elementary school about the Earth?" And she says, "They taught me the Earth was flat." Just like that, out of nowhere. No idea that I was even interested in flat Earth. And I told her that it is, and that God's right above. And she broke down in tears. It's an amazing interview. Amazing interview. Went super viral all over the place. So
That's
I said
awesome.
to everybody, I said, this is it was in 2020. And I said, everybody, go to old age homes and find people over 100 and let's interview them, right? We don't have much time. Everybody. A week later, the boogeyman hit and all nursing homes were closed.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody
That's
could
some
go into a
timing
nursing home. Yeah. So I may have been responsible for that.
Oh no. Yeah, the Fed
Yeah,
was responsible for that.
The Fed. And then you're talking about, Polaris. Now, Polaris is only important to Earth because it's a random star. It just happens to be where our axis of rotation points, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they tell us, of course. This
Right.
is the heliocentric model. So, if not to scale everybody, right? So if Polaris is along that line as we spin, Polaris wouldn't move allegedly. Okay. That's I'm telling you the heliocentric story. So if you lived on Saturn or another one of these other planets, Polaris would just be another random star. If I was angled this way, it would be that star, right? That if this planet is pointing, this would be their North Star, that would be theirs, this one would be theirs. Makes sense, right? Just whatever is over your axis of rotation, right? So we're taught that all of the planets circle the sun, right? But the truth is, all of the luminaries, sun, moon, stars, and asteroids all circle Polaris. They all make their spirograph patterns around Polaris, not the sun. They all go around Polaris. And they make these incredible spirographs. I think that's why they got rid of spirograph. You're a lot younger. Do you remember spirograph?
I do kind of remember them. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, that was like the greatest toy ever, and was really well made. But you would create these patterns, and I even think just looking at these patterns gives you information, and so they had to get rid of it. So
yeah, actually, that might be a good transition soon into the old world because those patterns are super interesting.
Oh, they're everywhere. Do you have slides you want to share or anything or
no, I don't. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm pretty unorganized with all my my pictures.
That's all right. I can do you know about OBS?
Yes.
All right. So OBS, if you learn how to use OBS, you can organize them and be able to bring stuff up really quick. I have like so much stuff that it's becoming like, which folder did I put it in? But it's really easy to pull in. So help with that, I could help you.
Okay, great.
Where do you want to start on the old world?
Yeah, well, I think that's just going from, I mean, like I said, literally, this is my truth journey. So I've gone down all the kind of things, and I think I'd already discovered flat Earth, and that was something I talked about for quite a while. But you know how it happens. Like you start talking about whatever, and your community says, "Hey, you need to talk about this." And I started to look into the old world architecture. And as a guy who grew up in a construction family, we owned a construction company. Architecture is interesting to me. Some of the very first videos I did, like my biggest kind of first viral video was about the Hoover Dam. And so I was kind of looking into all this real weird Art Deco stuff. And that's all I knew it to be. And I just thought, oh, this is Freemasonry, stuff. And that like they got their signs and their symbols all over it. And so that was my kind of first level of understanding of like what that stuff was. But it wasn't until later that it was not just the old world, but it was presented with the idea of the mud flood. And that's when I was like,
Right.
I don't
So
know what to do with
the
this.
the old world, I was learning about star forts, right?
Star
Which
Forts are crazy.
star forts are just insane. And okay, I got all that. It makes sense. The mud flood. I'm seeing enough evidence on that. The Transcontinental Railroad was excavated. It wasn't built. You
Yeah,
look
you
at
see
all
all
the
those old pictures of them digging up the
right,
railroads. You're like,
all the
what
old
the heck
movies,
am I looking up?
all the old movies. They're working on the railroad, right? They got the people working on the railroad. What are they working on? Do they have, tools? They had pickaxes and shovels,
Right.
right? They had shovels. They're carrying dirt away.
You
Um,
know what's funny? This was real quick about that note was that I started as I got older liking history shows. It's kind of like history class is awful at school, but when you get old, you be at a certain age, history starts to become fascinating. And I watched the show called The Men Who Built America. It was on the Channel. It was like kind of like a docu series, with like
yep.
dramatic little moments in it. And I remember thinking it was the weirdest thing. And again, this is before I got into all these conspiracies that Vanderbilt, he was the railroad tycoon, and they were saying that he always had these issues where the railroads got overbuilt. And I remember just thinking, like, what does that mean? Like, why would there be too many railroads? Because you'd think, like, at that time period, you would just take, like, I don't know, railroads from the factories, maybe from major city to major city. Like, how would they ever get overbuilt? But it's likely because there were just tons of railroads because like he didn't put them down, he dug them up. Like why it makes no
Yeah.
sense that you could ever overbuild that, and especially when you know these robber barons that guys like J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller and Carnegie, they would buy refineries and factories just to shut them down. So I was like, why would they worry about if they were overbuilt? They would just don't ship there. But I remember that was a constant theme that like it was almost like these guys were going to go out of business because there was too much infrastructure. And I was like, that makes no sense because they would have been the first people to build any of that.
I totally agree. And I remember as a kid, I think it was in the 60s or 70s. I lived near Manhattan, and they said they were building a new subway line. And I'm like, wow, that's got to be difficult with all those buildings. How deep do you have to go not to
Mm-hmm.
interfere? And then all of a sudden it was built. I was like, wait, what? It was like they're going to build a new subway, and then like a couple months later, like, okay, it's done.
That makes
It,
no sense.
it
It
makes
would
no
take
sense.
forever.
Yeah, I think it the number six? I don't remember which one it was, but and then you start looking like when you go out of Grand Central, there's like tunnels that they don't use anymore. And you look at Penn Station. Penn
Oh gosh.
Station, they knocked down Penn Station. You know why? You know what the official reason was?
They were gonna it was too big or
It was
something. They
too
were
hard to
gonna
clean.
yeah, it was always I mean, if you imagine it, I think some of these things make a lot more sense that because they did not build it, that some of these things needed to be retrofit with HVAC systems and modern like conveniences, and it would have been difficult to probably run some of the stuff there. The old Penn Station is unbelievable, and to think that they only used that for like what like 30 or 40 years, that thing was built to last forever, and it probably did last forever until they destroyed it.
Yeah, it's amazing. When I was a kid, the um the Bronx looked like a war zone. Like, what happened here? Like, all these buildings are knocked down, and it was like, what happened? And they're like, no one's asking any questions. Everyone's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna rebuild this, we're gonna do that. Like, what actually happened?
Yeah, you know
These
what? I think that
people,
I want to say that picture you're showing right now, that
yeah.
might have been like my first experience into the old world stuff because I saw like New York City in the early 1900s, and I was like,
Wait a minute.
no, it didn't look like that. I mean, they didn't even have like how would they have done that? And I could not believe
Well,
it, but I was
so
just like,
you
it
don't
looks pretty
understand.
great.
This guy has a couple extra horses and other carts, and he could bring in all of the masonry blocks, and then they had some hemp ropes, and they could get them up high enough to build the buildings.
Yeah, I could not wrap my mind around that New York City looks nicer in the early 1900s than it does now.
So on the New World. So you got the mud flood, you got the buildings that just don't make any sense. Then comes in meltology. Is that the right word that we're using?
Yeah, well, that like I said, it's funny because the way that I kind of learned all these stuff, it was like I felt like kind of like a lot of conspiracies. There's one over here. There's one over here.
Yeah.
There's because we're talking about like tunnels, dumbs, like deep underground military bases. We were talking about weird anomalies outside, out in the western part of the country. I mean, at least from my perspective, I was going out west and I was going hiking going through like where the Valley of Fire is outside of like Vegas. I was
Okay.
going to Utah, like St. George. See, I went to Zion. I went to a lot of things. I started going on hiking trips. Oh, we went to Sedona, and I was like, this place looked like it got melted. And I was putting that piece together, but I didn't have all the other kind of pieces. And I started, eventually I said, the tunnels are under every old world city. And then some of these things I've seen like pretty good YouTube creator named John Levi. He started putting the meltology with connecting that they found stamped bricks in some of these kind of
Yes.
like red mountains. And they saw he actually had found like melted glass in between some of the cracks too. I was like, yeah, this stuff looks like. I guess when I originally thought about the meltology, I was kind of thinking like Sodom and Gomorrah in my mind. I was thinking like this was a long time ago. Maybe this was like giant, a giant city or something,
Right.
But then when I heard there was stamped bricks in it, I was like, this is more recent than that. I don't know
So
what this is.
John was my intro into Old World. He was like one of the first guys I watched. I got him right here on the app. And then
Hmm.
Sean Hibbler made Old World Order, which is kind of just like an intro
Yeah.
for
Hmm.
people new to it. I don't know if you've seen it.
I watched it. I would say I would recommend that
Great
to
intro.
normies if they've never heard anything about it. It's a good
And
intro.
and how do you feel about my lunch break?
I think he's great. I think he's
Yeah,
great. I don't keep up with all his stuff all the time, but yeah, he's done some great research.
yeah.
He's definitely he's really good. I mean,
It,
he
it,
edits the stuff really well, and it's
doing
all
it. He's doing a great job, and he used to do it on his lunch break. Now he's doing it full time. He's like us. We
mhm.
literally walked away. I'm a grifter because I charged $3 for my app, right? But I walked away from a high six-figure company that I started myself. I walked away from it all to be called a crazy flat earther, a freaking nut job, a Pokemon denier, right? I don't like to be a human pincushion, and I do it for $3. I do it because I'm grifting people. But the truth is, this is the only time in my life, the first time, not the only, I guess the first time in my life where my motivation wasn't money. My entire life, I was taught
Right.
to go after money, and every reason I did everything was for money and power, right? Just whatever, just ability to make more money. That's the last thing on my list. Of course, we need money to survive, but
Yeah.
but you know, I do this to wake up humanity. I think that whether you believe me or not, a lot of people don't. I do it because nothing makes me happier when somebody totally lost in the matrix sees creation. That's it.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. I mean, that's what I've told people too. I said that if I was obsessed with money, I would have just kept doing my day job because I could have made a lot more money
Exactly.
doing what I did before.
Oh,
And yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's just the point of like when you get to the point in your life where this is fun because for one, I like to learn. And for two, it's like I get to interact with a bunch of great people and I get to share what I've learned. Because I've done all kinds of other things that I've really enjoyed, but it was kind of more like selfish pursuits that really only I got satisfaction out of. But I do think that one of the coolest things is that when you learn something blows your mind, you can share it with someone. And so you get the benefit and they get the benefit too. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of like that being able to share something you learned and seeing the light bulb turn on in somebody else's head is pretty rewarding. So I do enjoy that. So yeah, that you yeah, I mean to do this for a living, I mean you have to make a little bit of money because otherwise we wouldn't be able to get all the equipment, get all the lights and the cameras and the microphones and honestly, I think that from my perspective now, I really just want to travel more. I think that the more I want to do is to learn is to go see things because you know how it goes that especially when you talk about old world stuff or stuff like in the meltology, you can never do it full justice by just looking at pictures of it. When you go there, and especially when you go into some of these old places, talking to the people around there, especially I've gone to some old museums that used to be courthouses, and I'm asking them the questions there. And when you hear the stories, you're like, you never would have heard that by looking on
Right.
the internet. You had to talk there and you had to see all the things with your own eyes. And I say that that's why, yeah, that's what I hope to be able to do. I think that's what I think that's the dream for all of us is to really, because we're not grifters, because I really want to go there. I believe all this stuff.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I don't believe the earth is flat. I know it is. I know that we're
Hmm.
not on a spinning ball. There's a lot I don't know. And I'm aware of that. Globers think they know everything and they actually know nothing. They don't even know their own model. We know their model better than they do because if they knew half of what we knew about their model, they'd be flat earthers, right?
Well, no, yeah, I say that for sure because I was saying like just showing you like when you showed the animation of the heliocentric model, I don't think most people know that. I didn't know that. They didn't teach me that in school. Like I never, I mean, I knew that, I knew that the Earth revolved around the sun and all the other planets revolved around the sun, but I'd never seen that corkscrew model where it's all shooting through space at the same time. And I was like, I think that is ridiculous. I never claimed to say I believed in that, but I guess when you say you believe in the heliocentric model, you're validating all of it, but people don't know that.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. The reason they don't show you that corkscrewing one is because it might wake some people up. Like, wait a minute, how do the eclipse cycles repeat on an 18-year cycle? How do, planet alignments not kill everybody on Earth? How does, there's a million questions that come with it. And once you understand how ridiculous it is, I was gonna say before, so I most of my life I didn't know what to believe as far as creation. And I was, I don't like using the word atheist. It seems like a bad word to me, but I guess I was, you know, non-creator, we're just random
Hmm.
specs, evolution and everything. And there was times in my life where maybe I was having a hard time and I would ask God for a sign, but I did it without any faith, any hope, any belief or anything. And I got nothing. Right. Which might
Hmm.
have been the best thing for me at the time, whatever it is.
Right.
And so there came a point where I have my company, I have two partners, we're doing really well, and my truth journey is interfering with it. It is. My one partner was complaining. He's like, Dave, you're not, this and that, even though I was the number one producer in the company and whatnot. It's like, he didn't like truth. He was he's a non-truther. And
Hmm.
I said, I said, I was thinking, I'm thinking of leaving the company. No, I was born up, born on the East Coast. I'm taught, go to college, get a job. I went into corporate America and then I left corporate America. I started my own business. I did everything that you're supposed to do. I became an entrepreneur. I have my own company. I'm making money. I have free time. All is well. And I'm thinking of walking away from it all. And I just kept trying to push it out of my head. I'm like, I can't walk away from this. This is what I worked my whole life to. And some people never even get there. And I was walking into work one day and I said, God, I need a sign if I'm supposed to do this. Right. And I walk into the office and my partner goes, Hey, we're doing a residential solar system. Now, when you do a solar system, there's a lot to do. And a residential one is about the same amount of work as a commercial one. But the commercial one has 5,000 panels versus 18 panels. So the money is completely different story. Right. And I'm
Hmm.
like, why are we doing a residential one? He goes, Oh, it's for the Clintons.
Okay.
And I look up and I go, I need another sign. I need another sign. I said, okay, I think that was a sign. I need another sign. And literally, it was either later that day or the next day. I don't remember. He goes, oh, by the way, all the commercial rooftops that we have easements on, we have systems up there, and we have kind of some rights up there. He goes, we're leasing it out to 5G companies to put in antennas on there, right? And I'm total anti, 5G,
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
right? And I was like, okay, all right, I think I got it. That's a sign. And then I was excuse me, I was talking to Owen Benjamin um later that day. And I told him I was thinking about it. He goes, just do it. God's got your back. And that's when I resigned.
That's good. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like that's what more people need to do because I think that, call it God, call it the Holy Spirit, call it whatever you want to, but it does seem like that, like it could just be your conscience. And it's like, so obviously your conscience is God is saying, you're not going to feel good about this. And again, if at one point you decide it's not about the money, well, then if you did the only reason you would be doing it was for the money. And it is scary. As I said, I just made the kind of jump to the full-time content creation. So it's even when you feel like it's meant to be, it's still scary going away from going to the unknown and stepping out. And so that's good. That's awesome. That's good testimony.
Yeah. I mean, that's my story. Where were
Let,
we going? We're
well,
going.
let
Go
me
ahead.
let me
Go
ask you
ahead.
a question.
Sure.
I actually want to hear your perspective. So what is your perspective on the old world and the mud flood and all that stuff? Because I'm curious to see where you came from, how you first viewed it and what do you think about it?
So I don't know the timelines, but I think it's somewhere in the 1700s where there was some sort of reset. Um, Man made, God made. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. Um, and I think we're repopulating. I think there was many resets on top of each other. There's some people that claim they know the dates. Interesting. I don't know. I can't confirm it. I wasn't there, but it wasn't thousands of years ago. At least the last one.
Yeah, you know what? You want me to lay out where I think we're at?
Yeah, yeah. But let me throw out one more thing.
Okay.
I think when God created the earth, he didn't just create a lumpy ball and say, all right, good luck. I hope you find fire. He laid down some infrastructure. And it was way more angelic. It was way more than we see today. I think it had a living architecture on it. That's my thoughts.
Well, I'll just say that from my perspective, so when we first started doing some of this stuff, one of the first kind of conspiracies I latched onto was before I woke up, I liked the show Ancient Aliens. And then so I was really interested in that show. I didn't really buy the alien stuff, but I just thought the megalith stuff was really interesting. And then so when I discovered Genesis 6 and the book of Enoch, I was like, wait a minute, this actually makes sense biblically that in the days of Noah, there were gods that came down, little g gods. They were fallen angels. They were the watchers from the book of Enoch. And they taught men knowledge of metalworking, probably stoneworking, witchcraft, astrology, medicine, all that kind of stuff. So it made sense to me that if they not only taught men, but they begat a race of giants, I'm like, this makes sense because if you actually listen to that show, Ancient Aliens, as dumb as it is, when they actually tell the mythologies and the stories, the more you look into it, they're just saying gods came down from the heavens and then giants built the stuff that you see. So I think a lot of that stuff was built. And I think that, of course, if you believe the Bible, men lived a long time back in those days. Because I think biblically, it was about 600 years from Adam to the flood. So, I mean, what could have got built in that antediluvian age? So then you have a massive deluge. You have the first massive reset. Everything's reset. But what would have been left after that reset? Stones too big to be moved. So I believe like the oldest, craziest, biggest megaliths, those are days of Noah stuff.
What about
Now,
when you see pillars like this? Everything has pillars below it. There's like pillars everywhere. And then God
yes.
built the earth on pillars.
Yeah, well, it says he laid the foundation of the earth. Yeah, there's pillars
Are
of
you
the
noticing that
earth.
there's like pillars the deeper you go, you find pillars under everything, pillars under the pyramids, pillars under all these old world caves and stuff. It's I
Yeah.
just find it interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fascinating, and I don't claim to know all of it. I said I have my theories like everyone else. But what I started to look into was that a lot of the most impressive old world stuff is Greco-Roman. And I started to think like is everybody who goes to DC for the first time, they're like, this is pretty weird. It's like this does look like what you'd imagine Rome in its prime or something. And then we're just told that Thomas Jefferson just thought Rome was cool or something like that. He liked the architecture. So he said, hey, let's just build our capital like we're Romans. And I thought, like whatever, like when you're in school, it's like, I mean, it's there, so it must be true. But when then you learn interesting things like that where DC is at now used to be some guy owned a farm. You can't make this stuff up. This guy's name was Francis Pope. Francis Pope. And he named his land. I've never named any property I've ever owned, but this guy named his land Rome. And where his land was is where Capitol Hill is right now. And I thought that is really weird that this place was literally called Rome. It looks like Rome. And I started to think, what if the Roman Empire was more vast than they told us it was? And so I think I've come to this conclusion lately that, for one, I think the timeline's distorted. I don't think Rome was 2,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago. I think Rome was likely closer to maybe 600, well, maybe like 1,000 years ago. So then if you think about it, like, could those buildings, the Greco-Roman buildings all over the place, could those things be 1,000 years old?
This is allegedly Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The craziest part is, if you think about it, like this time where they were building Washington, D.C., when I guess the capital was in Philadelphia at the time, like in the late 1700s, they said, hey, let's move our capital to this neutral place. That makes no sense, like logistically, because nobody supposedly lived there. So where's everyone staying? Because it's not like they can take the train to get there. They're like literally would have to take their carriages, or they'd have to live in tents.
How did people get to the World's Fairs? How did they build these buildings? Where did the horses get their water from? I mean,
how did they light up the World Fairs? Why are of all the World Fairs Greco-Roman? I think that was another one. That the thing that kind of really radicalized me was seeing the 1893 Columbia exhibition. Seeing that was like, what? There's no way that's Chicago in the 1800s. And then somebody later tells you, oh, those were just facades. That was just like a Hollywood set. Those are all temporary. And you're like, that doesn't look temporary. And how can the fountains and all the walkways and the bridges and all the things around it, how could that be temporary? That looks, you'd have to build that for real. And of course, like somebody in construction, when you see how big it is, it can't be just like, the term temporary just means you tore it down afterwards. Because knowing that they say millions of people went and visited that World Fair, and you see how big the buildings are, they would have to be strong enough to not fall down. So therefore, they're not really temporary. And if you actually look into them, actually what's really interesting, you mentioned before about Penn Station. If you look at pictures of the old Penn Station on the inside, for one, there's a phenomenal picture of like some kind of a room where the columns, where a man standing next to one of those columns looks like a grasshopper. Like he's not near as big as even the base of it, and it's huge. But there's other shots where you go in there and it almost kind of looks like an airplane hangar, and you can kind of see the steel structure that's holding it all up. And if you ever see pictures from the insides of those buildings, I want to say in Chicago, they built the biggest building in the whole world for one of those exhibitions. And if you look at pictures from the inside where they're having like their exhibits and stuff, it's got the exact same steel holding up everything. So the idea that it's just wood or paper mache or plaster of Paris or whatever they say it was, it's not. It makes no sense from a construction standpoint. It would be so dangerous. You think about Chicago, the Windy City. Right. You think you could build a building that big without making it like structurally sound? And if it's structurally sound, it's a real building. It's not temporary.
Right. This was, I think this was from a John Levy video where this was the World's Fair, and it was actually there in 1878.
Yeah.
You could still see it there, and it wasn't supposed to be built until 1915.
Yeah, right. So that was another one. So 1893, you have the Columbia exhibition, and then in 1894, you have the Midwinter's Fair in San Francisco. San Francisco, I read John Levi's book about evidence of the old world. That's great for just pinpointing, because San Francisco is a great example of a story that makes no sense. But let me get back to what I was saying about Rome.
Good.
I started to think, you know what? Biblically, Rome was the last great empire in the Bible. And it mentions that there's this stone in the kind of in the Daniel the Daniel story about the Nebuchadnezzar statue and the dream he had about the statue. You have a head made of gold. You have the torso is made of, and the arms are made of silver, bronze around the waist. You have iron on the legs, and then iron and clay at the bottom. So then it says a stone that's not made by human hands is coming out to destroy this statue, and this stone is Christ. It's his kingdom, and this kingdom is eternal after this. So what I found interesting is that biblically you have the last empire is Rome, and then Jesus tells his apostles that he's coming back in their generation. So with that mindset, kind of the same way flat earth, it's like if you look at the gospel, the text is actually pretty explicit that Christ's return is imminent. They're not waiting 2,000 years. It's going to be soon. The book of Revelation is written to 7 churches that are in Asia, and it's all individual letters to them. And this ties back into the mud flood, is that all those churches. So you're thinking so the book of Revelation is written to people in the Roman Empire. All those 7 places in Turkey, modern day Turkey, all had to be excavated. But then you keep doing more research. All of Rome had to be excavated. You ever see the earliest pictures they have the Colosseum in Rome? And there's massive piles of sediment and just dirt all around the thing. And you continue to kind of look through just modern headlines. It's some guy's farming in his field in Europe, and he discovers a Roman mosaic under the ground. And so when I saw the pictures from there's a church in Smyrna listed in the book of Revelation. And of course, you've got to think, Christ is telling them judgment's coming soon. And you see a picture, and you see these Roman columns that are 20 feet tall, and they are completely buried under the ground. And all these places were. So all these ancient sites in Rome, for one, it's these places are completely wrecked. And then you think about it, they're all buried under the ground. And history does not talk about that. So I started to wonder, what if that was the mud flood? Whatever that was, whatever that event was that destroyed Rome, what if that is what we're seeing? And then if you look into...
When do you think that was?
Well, like I said, I think it was the book of Revelation. I think it was bowls of wrath, trumpets from God, judgment. I mean, because this empire was destroyed. And then you see it have this very specific type of architecture. And Greco-Roman buildings they're in Australia, they're in South Africa, they're in both the Americas, all the way up to Canada. They're in Asia. There's Greco-Roman buildings in China and India. And obviously all the way up into Northern Europe, Northern Asia. So you have Greco-Roman architecture everywhere. And in the same way, you could take it back to a feature like Ancient Aliens. They would say, okay, so there's pyramids everywhere. So it makes sense to me that there's this connected civilization around the world. So what if we find a different connected civilization? And some people would say, oh, it's the Tatarian Empire. I think it's just every place. Is if Rome conquered the whole world, you would still have regions of the world, and they might even have slightly different takes on the Roman architecture. But to me, it's they were not, people were not, all these nations were under Romans' rule. And I would say that maybe that's what this is. And maybe the Rome was, when they say they conquered the whole world, it's not the known world. It was the world. I mean, even if you think about it, we're told that the Romans ruled for 1,000 years, or the Byzantine Empire ruled for 1,000 years. If you think, we're told that Alexander the Great conquered all the way into India, and he only ruled for 12 years. So why wouldn't the Romans, who ruled for a millennia, been able to do? You know what I'm saying? If they could build the Pantheon in Rome and all that stuff, what if they built things everywhere?
Hey, everybody, quick message that I'd like to share with all of you. Our lives are filled with toxins in our air, food, and even in the information we're taught. Avoiding them all is impossible, but helping your body detox doesn't have to be complicated. That's where Masterpiece comes in. Just 5 drops under your tongue twice a day, and that's it. Super easy, super simple, and it doesn't even taste bad. I've tried countless supplements, and while generally I'm pretty healthy, I didn't really feel much of an effect. But with Masterpiece, it delivered noticeable benefits. Check out the podcast I did with Terry from Masterpiece, linked below this video, or you can find links directly to Masterpiece on my website, flatearthdave.com, or in the shopping section on the app. The key to health is to detoxify. Now back to the show. You've seen the Prague clock, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So here's the Prague clock. Um, and so what if the world what if our known lands, our pond, if you will, was moving on this 26,000 year cycle? Here we go. Go here. Um, whoops, do that. Sorry. So this is where we live here. In 13,000 years, we'd live over here. So this is our North Pole. It's migrating around this red ring. And what if there was, all of our history over there that we just don't know of? That's why they're finding things under the ice in Antarctica.
I had it's probably been about a year ago now, but I had Seven Club, Cody on,
Yeah, yeah.
and we were talking about his idea, and I had said I'd kind of started to think about that, so I got my little map around here, and so you think about it like that, some people would just say, oh well, the dome covers out to Antarctica and that's it. Like the dome stops there. Like you could get to the edge and you could knock on the glass. But I don't know that the biblically it doesn't really say that. So I'm saying
That's what I say.
So what if the dome is way bigger?
So that's exactly what I say. There's biblical people out there that are like, Dave always talks about more lands. Whenever I talk about more land, I always say, this is speculation. We don't need to speculate what's beyond 60 degrees south to prove the earth is flat. We've already proven that. But God says, has the great expanse, whatever, the dome, the firmament. And if it connects, what if it connected 1,000,000 miles south of 60 degrees? That's a lot more earth. And
well,
it's
yeah,
still
absolutely.
biblical. Right. And
Well, absolutely. I think that the Bible actually indicates that how far the earth, how big the earth is. Like, where do you go to the ends of it, or you talk about the ends of the heavens?
Yeah.
So to me, it's like it's very possible. So I just thought about it like that. Yeah, what if the inhabitable part of the earth for us is where the circuit of the sun is, and if there is some kind of magnetic North Pole that's how this thing works. If it's like a toroidal field or something, if that could move, and so the precession of the sun works, and so wherever the circuit of the sun is, that's where the ice wall is. So you could say like, because the way Cody was talking about it was that if you had this, the sun would kind of start heading toward one part here, then this ice would melt, and then it would freeze back over here. But
Right.
what you're seeing with the Prague clock is that yeah, you're only seeing part of the realm that
And
we can inhabit. And you know what? It makes sense to me. I know some people say that, oh, the reason they don't let you go walk around freely in Antarctica is because you'll discover the dome. It's like it seems more likely to me is that they're looking for a land pass where
very,
where
very
they're
possible.
going.
So, they changed the clock. This was the background.
Yeah, they put a globe
this.
in there.
They put a globe in there. And no discussion, no town meetings, no architectural review board. They just changed it. Oldest clock in the world. Okay, give me a break.
And that clock too is really interesting to think about it. I want to say, wasn't it built in like the 1400s? Is what they say.
Something like that.
So you think about it. That's not a clock. That's a machine.
Yeah,
That's a very advanced machine. Because if you actually see like some of the earliest pictures of it, it looks ancient. And so just to think about how they would have knowledge about how everything worked and the processions of all these celestials with the zodiac, that is super advanced. But yeah, I think it's. I mean, again, I actually like to speculate about weird stuff like that because I don't.
Do you know about the Antikythera mechanism?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I've heard of that too. And that was that supposed to be for like sea navigation, celestial navigation for this for seas.
Shows the position of the sun, moon, some of the planets, all the eclipses, and it's accurate. It's like super accurate, and it's several thousand years old. We couldn't build something like this today. They MRI'd it, and they were able to recreate the same thing. And it's a computer long before our timeline says that was even a possible thing.
Yeah, there was another little rabbit hole we went down, kind of similar in that vein, was that some of those like automatons, some of those old like robotic machines and stuff, like you ever seen the ones where these old automatons could write, their eyes would move, they could have a pen and it would dip ink in it. These, and I want to say a lot of
Oh
those,
yeah, yeah, those are amazing.
they're like from like the 1700s.
I'm the Improbable Dreamer did a good video on that.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
unreal. And I started to think about it. So you think about how old some of this stuff actually could be. If you think about like in Greek mythology, they had, like you ever seen Clash of the Titans a long time ago, like when you're a kid,
yeah.
and they have that little robotic owl. And so there's also big machines. There's big robotic machines in Greek mythology. It's kind of like that if nothing like that ever existed, it's a very odd thing for ancient peoples to write about. But it's kind of like now I started to believe that I think that technology was very advanced during the times of Noah, during the Roman Empire, because of course, again, you look at some of the stuff they built, like the aqueducts that are still in use. They did some very advanced things. So if we clown on the idea that in the 1800s, people with horse and buggies and chisels could not build those things, we're also acknowledging that the Romans did some of that stuff a long time before that. So what I'm starting to believe is that they did have technology in the antediluvian times. They had them in the times of Babylon and the Phoenicians. They had them in the times of Persia, Greece, and obviously in Rome. So I think what the technology is it's different than what we have now, but it's advanced in its own way, and maybe it's more advanced.
I get it. We're told about
Atlas,
Atlas holding up the Earth, but in
hmm
reality, he was holding up the sky.
right?
Now, if he
That's
was
right.
holding up the Earth in space, how is he doing it? What's he standing on? What's he standing on?
Well, there's also that one. I know that one hieroglyph where it looks like an ancient Egypt, and it looks
Yep.
like somebody's holding up the firmament or something, the sky.
Yeah, I had that somewhere and I lost it. But yeah, the truth is here for everyone to see. They tell us revelation of the method. I mean, just on the recent event that just happened with Mr. Captain Kirk, um, they said, oh, when Bibi, they were Netanyahu was asked, you know, some people are claiming it was Israel that did it, right? And did you
Hmm
hear what he said?
I
He
know
goes,
the.
he goes.
I don't know if it
I
was
guess
exactly the time.
we stopped the moon moving and the sun moving around
Oh,
the
oh
Earth.
yeah, that's right.
But
Yeah,
he
that's right.
always throws in. He loves throwing in little flat Earth clues. He's done it. He's done it before at a UN meeting.
he also
It's
blamed
fascinating.
Islamic terrorists that might have had something to do with it,
Uh,
and I was like, that dog does not hunt anymore. Are you seriously going to blame Islamic extremists again? Oh, well, we should definitely go back to war in the Middle East. I mean, it's like, good grief. It's like this guy has been lying in front of Congress for like 30 years now.
yeah, he changed his name several times in his profession too.
Yeah, what he's like from Philly.
He was
Is he
something
like from like
else. He
he's
was
like
an
from the Bronx or
accountant or
something.
something. It was crazy. It's crazy. I don't want to talk about him. Um, what else you want to talk about?
No, I want to go back to the old world thing for a second
Please.
though, because I think it's when you look into the old world stuff, and anyways, just to kind of finish that point, it's just that I think Roman architecture could be evidence of a that we're closer to the Romans. But I do believe there was a reset, something that ended their empire. And I think again there was another reset, not as big, that happened probably late 1700s, maybe it was going on during the early 1800s. And that's when you get into the orphan trains and the potential effort to repopulate cities that were founded. So I think that's really interesting. But I think that it was more like there was a godly reset that ended Rome, but then there was probably a man-made reset that might have ended that glorious time, the time that was better than the times we're living in now. But I think that it was fascinating. I want to go back to something you said about that, like the abandoned subway lines and places like that in New York City. It kind of again, it's kind of like the idea that the railroads got overbuilt. How would it be possible to overbuild the tunnel system under New York City? And it's funny, like, because a guy like me, I get joked on because I always have like a movie reference, but I always think back to all the movies where they're just going like, like even like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something. And then like the subway system, the abandoned tunnel systems under New York, they're like so vast. And to me, it's like that kind of massive construction, all the things that would go into doing that, only for it to be abandoned almost shortly after it was put in place. It makes no sense. And so every instance I've looked into, every old city has an underground section to it. And so when you kind of go out west, that's when this thing becomes a timeline problem, I believe, because these western cities have underground sections to them. And so you're thinking like they say that miners went across the country to find these, find gold. They founded cities too, and they have old world cathedrals, stately courthouses, Greco-Roman state capitol buildings, and all this stuff. And not only that, they all have a very intricate underground tunnel system under every one of them. And yeah, I know that like you mentioned my lunch break, he talks about a lot of these ones, and I've seen it in my own, like Richmond, Virginia, that all these old world buildings have tunnels connecting all of them together.
Yeah.
I don't think that makes sense timeline wise. And I don't think it makes sense that they could have done that in the 1800s.
I don't think we can do it today.
Well, if they did it today, there was a kind of a big joke. And if I remember, I went to probably early 2000s, I went to Boston, and that's back when they had like the big dig.
The big dig. Yeah.
And it was like a big boondoggle, right? Yeah. Because it was such a joke that they couldn't do something like that in any kind of a timely fashion. Now we're supposed to be led to believe that people with horses and buggies
and no power tools
could excavate these places. And the crazy part, if you actually like kind of wrap your mind around, is that in the 1800s, would you build the cities first and then build the underground part, or would you build the underground part first or the cities first? It's kind of like the chicken or the egg, like. Because to me, it's like if you build a foundation for a building, and now what are you building under it? And then what are you supporting the building that you just built?
It's incredible.
Like I said, it's like questions that like I kind of have like my curious mind and my like with my construction background. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense. And the evidence is also that all these buildings, with the mud flood evidence, many of these old buildings in towns that do not have basements. Like, so where I live right now, I live on the coast in Virginia, and Norfolk, Virginia is 7 feet above sea level. So every time there's a major storm, a nor'eastern or like a hurricane coming up the coast, tropical storm, that place floods like crazy. So they don't build the basements anymore. But if you go downtown and you look at the oldest buildings they all have basements, or not really basements. They're the first floor that you have to either walk up the steps to get to the second floor that's now the first floor, and you walk down the stairs to go to the original first floor. And every time it rains, these places have water damage. The water, like either the windows are literally like level with the sidewalk, or they're below grade, where water could leak right into them. You can't be both advanced to build architecture like that and also so practically stupid that you'd build a flood hazard.
Where was it? Like in Milwaukee or somewhere where one of the Great Lakes, the level dropped. I think it was just this year or last year. And they found a stone structure a couple miles offshore, which was an intake valve. And intake, it took water into a giant tunnel 200 feet lower that went all the way into the city and was feeding the water into the city. Like, how did they build that? Like, it was built before the lake was there.
There was another one. I think it sounds exactly kind of the same story. I just heard, we did it on one of my podcasts, there's a video that was kind of going viral on TikTok, and it was about this pumping station, kind of this intake valve in Lake Michigan.
That's the one. That's the one. My bad.
That fed to Chicago.
Yeah.
And I want to say that it was like 7 miles out was it something like that? It was like 7 miles.
And then they had to go down like 200 feet, and then they built the tunnel. No power tools. How did they build the cofferdams to stop the water from going in?
Oh, it's it makes no sense. You got to really think about it too. Is that again, logistics wise, how much could people in the 1800s? How much could they do in the wintertime in Chicago? And the winter lasts a long time.
Yeah.
That would be logistics would suck to do that kind of stuff. And of course, I was even thinking practically. I'm like, why would they build it so far away? Like, couldn't you build it closer to the shore?
Well, you want the clean
But yeah, they
water
had
out in
to.
the middle.
Oh gosh, but yeah, what's really interesting about Chicago too is they're like the water towers there. They look like ancient castles. They
Wow.
look so ridiculously overbuilt or whatever they're doing. And then of course Chicago has the major fire. Like was it shortly after, I want to say like 1870, they had a major fire. Did like Dolly or something like that? What was it? Dolly or Molly the cow
Kicked over the lantern, right?
kicked over a lamp. And like I'm just asking questions. I'm like, where is this cow in relation to downtown Chicago?
And it burnt down all the buildings made of rock and brick and cement.
The pictures that you see of the aftermath of the Chicago fire, it looks exactly like pictures of the aftermath of cities in Europe after bombing in
Right.
World War One and World War Two. Like there parts of parts of buildings are standing. There's rubble everywhere. Yeah, it looks like there was explosions everywhere. Because yeah, that's what we try to tell people. We're like, you know that it wouldn't melt brick and stone because that's what your fireplace is made of. Like regular fire, I mean, some fire gets hot enough to melt rock, but not regular fire.
I
Like
got a
whatever
question.
did that was explosions.
I got a question of your thoughts on the meltology side of it. We see these bricks that transition into stones, into
It's
bigger stones.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and they call it popcorning, right? And
Hmm.
and people like I was like a popcorning. Come on, yeah, but what's the explanation? I mean, there's like a transformation that happens. I don't know. I mean, I look at it, I have no answer. No answer than a leprechaun did it.
Well, it's interesting. I want to say that they have good examples of that. I want to say like when you say leprechaun, like I know, like I think in Scotland, I know Scotland's not where the leprechauns come from,
I didn't know
or they.
that.
No, but
Maybe it
what
is.
I'm saying is like that there's old fortresses where you can see the transition where they know it was stone, but or no, it was like some kind of a brick, and it turns into stone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the really interesting thing is the more you kind of do into this research, of course, you get some wild conspiracies there where I did a stream with this one lady one time, and she said that no mountains are actually natural. They all used
I,
to be buildings and stuff like that.
I'm
So you
almost
have like
there. I'm almost there. I'm
you
almost
have
there.
people you have certain people say that the mountains were all ancient trees, right? So they're
Trees,
either
buildings, or titans. Okay.
right,
I think
exactly.
that's the majority, if not all, of what we see. I don't know. That's
I
just my
think
thought at this time.
I think that it mentions that God did make some mountains, so I think that there are some natural mountains,
Okay.
but I do think it could be all of the above. I think that some of that stuff could be all of the above because, yeah, of course, you see like in Devil's Tower in Wyoming, that certainly looks like an ancient tree. There's lots of examples of things that look like they were giant trees, and biblically there were giant trees. But yeah, the meltology research, if you continue to look into it, there is a lot of examples of things that you never would have thought rock would look like. Yeah, I saw
You,
that picture recently,
yeah.
and I said that's got to be AI. I think what it
Yeah.
is actually,
Oh,
I think it's clean. I think it's a cleaned up version of the picture. It's
right.
probably like,
Maybe.
somebody like hit the enhance button and it kind of took out some stuff. But yeah, that place is absolutely real. And I was always kind of one of those persons, like just thinking like a biblical Christian. When somebody told me the Grand Canyon was formed over billions of years by the Colorado River, and you're like, if you've been to the Grand Canyon, you know what water does to rock over a billion years. It would get real smooth. But the Grand Canyon is the opposite of that. It's
Right.
rough, it's jagged. It wouldn't take us, whatever happened there probably happened dramatically and fast.
Right.
So that being said, that if some kind of geologist said wind and water did that over like a million years, Well, for one, that it's just a guess. It's obviously couldn't be proven. But for two, it's like I think that there is something about like intuition. There's about going with your gut. And when you see something like that, it's awesome to us because it's not usual. Because if that was usual and wind and water and rain did that, then you'd have countless examples near you. All the mountains might look like that, but
What's
yet
your
they don't.
right? What's your thoughts on we have the giant bells and then the church organs, the organs that are in churches, the old world organs.
Well, I think that's when you get into again like the idea that they had advanced technology, but it was likely different technology. And I think that maybe the missing component is, and kind of going back to when you were showing like those patterns of what the stars do or the wandering stars, the planets do. I think it's really fascinating the idea of this frequencies and sound resonance, vibrations. And
100%.
I think it definitely seems like that with that old architecture, especially when you think about you have like in those old world cathedrals, you have like the rose windows. They kind of make some of those patterns look like the patterns, the cymatic patterns that sound and vibrations make, frequencies make when you have like those water plates with the sand, and they emulate almost exactly what those churches do. So if you think that all these old churches had bell towers, they had massive, incredible, talk about incredible
Right.
machines. Those pipe organs are absolutely insane. And these
So
buildings are literally made to resonate
yeah,
the sound in them. So imagine like I think a lot of people believe that some of it has to do with energy, but I think the bells and stuff specifically have something to do with possibly
I
healing
believe
centers.
and the official story on the organs was 100 some odd years ago, or whatever. The Carnegies donated money to fund 7,000 church organs. This is what we're told, that they donated all this money to fund all these churches to have these organs. So now we know where they came from.
Yeah, and of course with the bells too is almost like the I don't know if irony is the right word, but knowing who got rid of them and what they ended up doing with them, they melted them down to make weapons of war.
Yeah, we needed that
It,
for bullets.
it definitely kind of makes sense that if the people who run this world that we think run the world, what would they do with something good like something that would actually be a free healing, apparatus? They would take it and turn it in something that would kill you. I
JT,
mean, so wicked.
why would they lie about the shape of the earth? Why would they lie about our history? I still have to go to work on Monday.
Well, that again, I think that's again like you were talking earlier about like that's why how people get stuck in the matrix or like they don't into the truth journey because I think that certain people maybe their lives are so good that they don't even want to know any of these things. Let's
Right.
just don't bum me out. I don't want to know that. But yeah, so I don't know if you ever saw this, Dave. Is the pretty good documentary, and I know this guy's kind of a pariah in the community now. Erwan, he
Here,
did this 5 part documentary about the lost history of flat Earth.
right here, baby. In the old world section, Lost History of Flat Earth. It's right here.
I would say that's pretty good. I mean, I know he did it. I know that wasn't all his own research,
Right.
but he put it together in a pretty compelling way. But it kind of goes through all this. Like, why would they lie about the shape of the Earth? Does
I
it have
think
something to
start.
do with this? That the idea that these cities are laid out on this flat plane like a circuit board, and if you make it, the one thing that makes absolutely perfect sense to me is that if you could have free healing based on frequencies and water and vibrations, well, what if you could have free energy based on like these old world antiquitech and you have the star forts in the water, and if they could tap into the ether, and there's this connected circuit board based on that we live on this flat biblical plane. Well, if you're John D. Rockefeller and you create the modern school system and the modern medicine, and your main job is to sell quote unquote fossil fuels, well, why would you ever let anybody know that there's a renewable free energy?
No,
I mean, it makes obviously follow the money. It makes absolutely sense why they would lie about that because it would benefit us.
people. That's like the most common question. Why would they lie? But it is the most important question. And when you have all of your believed proofs of the globe taken away, then you say, well, why would they lie? Right? It's like walking into a room, you see dead bodies all over the place, and you go, why would somebody kill them? Well, no, no. I just showed you all the dead bodies. Okay. We
Right.
showed you the old world stuff. We showed you the melted buildings. We showed you the earth is flat. We showed you there's no curvature. We showed you space is fake and gay. Right. We showed you all of that. Well, why would they lie? And it's literally to hide God, to take away our divinity. Like if you don't, if you're living in fear, you don't believe in God, um, you think that there's nothing more, you literally limit your thoughts, and your thoughts create your reality. When people say why the lie, I show them this. I show them this as my my why the lie graphic. I say the first thing is, it's hard to take a ball away from a big baby, and that is a fact. But this is our mind. It's connected everywhere. We're just like a cell in God's brain, however you want to look at it. We're literally a piece of this incredible matrix, and it's infinite, and it is filled with abundance. There's no lack. There's no hate. There's just abundance everywhere. But if you cap it off with a globe, you're just stuck on that ball of fear. The ball is a world of fear and lack.
Mm-hmm.
And you disconnect everybody from each other. You make everybody hate each other. You make everybody fight, no matter what. They just fight. They want everyone hating and not loving when the opposite is the truth of this world. We are souls having this physical experience, and they're the evil ones, whoever they are, that are running this place or are trying to control us and make us hate each other, because they want that loose energy. It's a spiritual, energetic war.
Yeah. Well, I think that like I said, what I was just getting into is that this whole system that we're currently in does not make sense of the system that was before that created grand and beautiful things. Because, like you said, why does it matter? Because I got to go to work on Monday and I got to be there from 9 to 5. And I'm trying to live for my afternoons and evenings to my weekends, and then potentially get, like, hopefully, God willing, I get a 2 week vacation in the summertime. But from our perspective, it makes no sense because we have been monetized. We're little cogs in this system. It's all based on that we become debt slaves to usury. So we have to continue to grind. And of course, the more harder you work, it's like maybe I can build up a little bit for when I'm old. And then I can finally start to enjoy my life when I'm too old to really do so. And so, yeah, if you think about that, if there was a different system in place, then maybe that's what explains why this makes zero sense. And I love what you said to the old lady in the nursing home, is that, yeah, like in this ball earth heliocentric model that everything stretches out to infinity. So where is God exactly in that scenario? It's kind of like all theoretical, right? But the Bible indicates that he's close, right? If he sits on top of the circle of the earth, it's like, where's God? God's up. You ask a little kid, it's like, where's God at? He'd be like, he's up there. But then you ask an adult, they'd be like, oh, they'd probably give you some really complex, ridiculous answer. You ask a kid, where's hell? Hell's down there. Where's heaven? Up there. And it's like literally, it's like faith like a child. And yeah, to know that your creator is not far away. He's close. He sees all. He's above us. And it's not theoretical. I mean, it's described as literal. And it's like that you go back to Psalm 19:1, and it says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament is his handiwork. Then you get into kind of like the Mazroth, but it's like literally saying that, like what you indicated, that if you see a dome, it indicates there's a creator.
Right. And Werner von Braun on his gravestone, Psalms 19:1 is all it said.
Let me ask you a question. So what do you think about that? Like, I mean, because obviously, like, what's your interpretation of why that's on his gravestone?
I go back and forth, but if I had to take a bet, I would say it's revelation of the method. I think they are just always telling us the truth. And, and oh,
Do you think
that's the point I was going to make
do
before.
you think that's something do you think that that's something that he wished to be on there, or do you think that somebody else put that on there?
It might have been his controllers, or it might have been him, or he may have been one of the controllers. I couldn't tell you, but I think I think the way this place works is the bad ones know that they're not allowed to break our free will. So they always tell us the truth. Always. They always tell us the truth. And if I gave you an apple that was poisoned, I said, eat the apple, and you ate it and you died, that's on me. But if I said, hey, JT, I got a poison apple. If you eat it, you're going to die. Here, it's delicious. It's on you now if you eat it, because you have to use your God-given common sense. And I think that God
So
wants us.
you think that's karmic retribution kind of a thing?
Yeah.
So that lets them
I
off
mean,
the hook?
that's yeah, and I kind of almost agree with it. All right. I think that if you're not here, and here's the thing, I think that we are immortal souls. I don't think there's any way that they can kill our soul. We can have a hellish experience here, but when we leave, we'll go, wow, that was amazing. Like if you play a video game, a rock 'em, sock 'em, shoot 'em up video game, and all of your friends attack you and just make it, you're bleeding all the time, you never have any energy, and then finally you're out of the game, you go like, oh, all right, that was amazing, right? And then you go back in and you do it again. Okay. And you try to do better the next time. So not saying that we're in a video game. I'm just saying that God wants us to use the gifts that he gave us. And if you're here operating as an NPC and not using it, life's going to suck. All right. But that's okay. You're going to learn something from it. You're going to learn something. Your soul is going to learn something. God's mind is going to learn something. We're all going to learn something. But it's just the experience you're going to have could be looked at as sucking. Right. But sometimes a sucking experience is what you need. Right. So I'm looking for awesome experiences. Right. I've built myself up in the business world. I've been very successful, and I've never worked harder in my life after I left and started doing this. I work all the time. I barely sleep. I work while I'm sleeping. I'm always thinking of stuff. I'm always working. Like I was like, you know what? I even sacrifice, like, you know what? I got a great workout I'm going to do today, and then I'll end up blowing it off sometimes because I came up with some ideas that I needed to implement into my presentations and stuff. So
Yeah, same.
I work harder than I've ever worked before. But if I had a regular job, I'd be doing this in my free time. So am I
Right. No,
really
that's
working? Yeah.
same.
So if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. But I am working very hard, and
Oh yeah, no,
and
I totally can relate.
it's for the same reason that you're doing it, JT.
You want my take on the karmic retribution stuff and the revelation of the method?
Sure.
So the way I see it now, so in the Bible, the devil is described as the accuser of the brethren. So if you really think about it, it's kind of like that. If you got somebody to do something wrong, just imagine as a father, and your kid did something wrong that he had no idea was wrong. You really wouldn't be too upset with them. You might get upset because like, oh, that what you did was actually really dangerous, but you wouldn't really judge him harshly if he actually didn't know what he did was wrong. So I think what the devil does is he does tell you what you're doing, and he gets you to make the decision to go against what you kind of know to be true. And I think that so he can accuse you later. It's kind of like you know,
Yes.
when the devil tempts Adam and Eve, or Eve specifically, he says, he kind of quotes the scriptures. God really didn't say that, even though she's saying he did. And he's kind of just saying, like, he's calling God a liar, and then he gets her to do it anyways. But I find it really fascinating. We started to have this discussion on my podcast recently about what if the devil is appearing to be a man right now? Because they always show you in the movies, like you think about like the Devil's Advocate, in this new Lord of the Rings series, Rings of Power, Sauron is a man. And so I found it really interesting in almost all of these stories that it's like the devil is crafty enough where he gets you to make the decision. So then when you could say, you tricked me, and he'd be like, no, 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 you made that decision. Like you knew what you were doing when you did it. And it's like, and when you see the look in their face, they're like, you'd have to agree that.
I think Judgment Day is when you have to judge yourself.
Well, you have to. I mean, but I think that that's the thing. It's like that only God knows really what you're accountable for. Because I think that, yeah, like you're not. It's kind of like that. I don't think the children go to hell, even
I don't
if they
think. I
don't
think.
know.
I think that people that go to hell literally are living in hell, and when they leave, they go back to their home.
Well, I think that the thing is that just, I mean, I'm just going to go biblically. It's just, I would say that babies don't go to hell when they die.
I
So,
agree.
because like they're not accountable to the things they didn't know. But I think that's why like our enemy would want us to be accountable. And I think that ultimately we all kind of know, and we all kind of like you kind of get into the old world stuff. And I've been teasing for a while, and I know people are going to get mad that even saying this now. So, but I wanted to make like a little season video, and that's kind of like goes into the old world, the biblical view of like the old world, the mud flood, and the resets. And I just started to think about it. It's like the almost like that speech at the beginning of the Matrix. That's how I was kind of like going to present this. Is just that you can't really wrap your finger around it, but everybody knows something's wrong. But it's the people who basically they ignore that feeling because they are telling you all the time that there's everything's fugazi, everything's weird, and people who are introspective, and I guess the people who are curious, they come to these conclusions we do, and not necessarily because you want to. A lot of times it's kicking and screaming, like, "Oh no, that not that." It's like Neo at the beginning of the movie when he's first told, he throws up. Like
Right.
that's all of us, kind of at the beginning of this journey. But I think it's kind of like that. What is it? Is it the red pill or the blue pill? If you take the blue pill, you're going to wake up in your bed and you just believe whatever you want to believe. But that's not us, and I think I think God knows that, and I think the devil knows that too. It's like, do you want the blue pill? I can give you that fake steak that what's his name Cypher is eating.
Yep.
You can have a great time eating this in this artificial world, but I think for us, it's it
I'd
is
never go back.
you are told because I do think that there is accountability to that, and I think that I think that those who love the truth will end up finding it.
That is a that is a good statement to kind of wrap it up on. Um, I think that there are some people that are not meant to wake up, and and that's their journey. I don't judge them for it, but I'm pretty good at sensing right away if this person has the ability to wake up or not. Do you think that there's people that cannot wake up?
I guess it's funny. It's like biblically, you have people that have hard hearts, right? Like that, even it says in the Bible, like that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. So I think certain people make their choices, and I think God gives us what we want most of the time. And there's really good examples in the Bible where it's like what you want will end up being like the end of you. And but I don't ever like to put anybody in that category because from God only knows that. So from my perspective, everyone can wake up. But with all that being said, there are some interesting like studies about especially people having no internal monologue and stuff like that. And to me, when I first heard that, I was like, that is the most frightening thing I've ever heard because I thought my internal monologue, I thought everyone had one for one. I thought that's just me thinking. So it's sort of weird to me to think that people don't actually have a kind of a dialogue in your head about like what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And so, it's hard not to think
Somebody told me
the,
years ago.
it's not what I'm saying. It's hard not for me to think the NPC meme.
Yeah.
Like when I think about people not having one of those.
Somebody pointed
Like,
out to me years ago when you have to make a decision, instantaneously, you know what that decision is, right? If you have all the
well,
information
that's
you
kind of like
need,
going with your gut,
no,
right?
but instantaneously, you know it, but you'll ponder and torture yourself for
That's
hours or days or whatever
yeah.
it is
Hmm.
until you make that decision that you knew at the first microsecond. So when I have to make a decision, I was like, what's my gut? Okay. And then I'll like, can I talk myself out of that? Nope, I can't. And I'm over it. I'm done.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. So that being said, is it possible that some people, I guess the fact of the matter is some people are never going to wake up. We don't want to give up on our loved ones, but I think we're also aware enough to know that I've taken a lot of comfort in this. It can kind of be a black pill for some people, but I think this is a white pill for me. Is that I can't save anyone. I'm here, and I think it's ultimately God who's going to draw them closer to Him. So I'm here to be a laborer, and I'm here to plant seeds. And I feel like that's what we were talking about earlier about you could be right about something and you could be sharing it at the wrong time. So you could be right and still be wrong. And so I think I've learned enough when to shut up. What does it say in the Proverbs? It says, even a fool appears wise when he closes his mouth. So you have to know, like, even that yourself, it's like that if you overshare with somebody, you might actually prevent them from getting there sooner. I think ultimately, if they're going to get there, they'll get there eventually anyways. But you could probably delay the process by being a jerk or just being aggressive with what you believe to be true. So I think from my perspective, it's like, hey, I've got a message. I'm here on my street corner. I'm not trying to I'm not soliciting knocking down your doors to try to tell you all the crazy stuff that I believe. But if you're here and you're interested, then stick around. There's more. And I think that from our perspective, it's like, yeah, that they're getting, people are planting seeds all over the place. And then so eventually when they come to me, maybe they're ready already. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
Whatever you said would probably be enough to get them kind of over the thing.
It's a fascinating journey. It's not boring. God created this place with endless opportunities, endless abundance, and it's up to us whether we experience it or not.
100%. Actually, I was just talking about that if your life's boring, it's kind of your fault at this point.
Because you're boring.
It's because you're not. Yeah, because there's so many things I think to be interested with now. It's like I know that when you start doing stuff like we're doing, you don't feel like there's enough time during the day.
Oh, there's not. So, I actually said years ago, I was like, I couldn't keep up. There's so many videos I needed to watch, so much research I wanted to do. I said, God, I need more time to research, right? I got insomnia. I literally started only sleeping 4 hours a night. So I had like an extra 5 hours.
Be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish for. Right? So I haven't slept since 2018.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I totally get it. Yeah, because I used to be really into like marathons and cycling racing and stuff, and I used to get up real early, and then I'd try to be in bed by like 8:30, maybe watch a little TV. But now it's like doing this, and eventually I was trying to do some more of that stuff kind of like a couple years ago, and I was just like, I had to kind of choose. Like, I can't do both. Like, I'd be burning the candle at both ends. I said, so now obviously I stay up too late and whatever. Well, but it's all worth it.
We do the best that we can with what we know, I guess.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you? What's the best way to follow you? What's the easiest way to follow you?
Well, I go by JT Follows JC, and I want to say that probably the place, if you enjoyed this conversation, we have lots of them on my podcast over on YouTube, so you can check me out there first. But I go by JT Follows JC on pretty much everything, and if you find me anywhere, I have a link tree. So I'm on X, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on TikTok. I'm on audio podcasts. You can check me out on Apple or Spotify or wherever you hear podcasts. Look up JT's Mixtape. But yeah, you can find me anywhere. And if you like shorter stuff, I make shorter reels like Dave was talking about. But if you want long form stuff, I talk about everything for probably too much time, too long. But whatever. But if you enjoy it, it's good.
And for JT's followers, you can find me at flatearthdave.com. All my stuff is there. I'm on YouTube, TikTok, all the platforms, but just go there. All the links are there. And this is my app if you want to learn about Flat Earth and the old world.
Awesome, Dave. Awesome. I appreciate you having me on. This was fun.
All right, man. Thanks. Great chat.
Hey, everyone. If you enjoyed this interview, please help support my work and help wake up others by referring or gifting the app to at least one person today. By doing that, you're going to help wake people up and help me to continue doing other interviews like this. With the censorship out there that's going on, it's very difficult to find relevant information. And the app, as you know, brings people to the truthful information of our world. So help support my work, help support your efforts in waking up friends, family, and strangers. Gift them the app or just recommend the app. And let's make 2025 the year Flat Earth breaks free. Check the links below for information on how to gift the app or just refer the app to others and use your referral code to earn Dome cryptocurrency and a free subscription. Thanks.